Hey, Travis with TCustomz Productions, TCustomz.com. As you might already imagine, today's going to be a slightly different type of video. I'm going to probably zoom in on the keys here in just a little bit. Over the years, I've gotten a lot of questions about music theory, about chord progression. Some people were having problems adding additional instrumentation to their sample-based beat. Maybe they have a skeleton and they're trying to add different instruments on top of that. They're having issues identifying keys with the sample, knowing what scales to play, knowing what keys to play. Time to time, I want to shoot some videos that might help some of you in those areas. And if I get enough requests, you give me specific questions and specific topics that you would like covered, I'll be happy to shoot more videos. And if there's enough requests, I can even do like a little mini series on this. As some of you may know, I did have about 5 years of formal piano lessons. It's been a while ago, and it's been a while since I've really played a lot of the classical pieces and things that I played then, but nonetheless, the foundation and the theory sticks with me, and it's something that I still use very heavily today. It's something that I rely on when I'm going to work on any new tracks. Help me to identify keys, different melodies and counter melodies that might work together, the key of the sample that I might be working on if I'm working on a sample-based beat. There's some people who can get away with just playing by ear, and that's fine if that works for you. But if you continue to find yourself struggling in these kind of areas, I'm a big proponent of learning the theory. There's different degrees of that. You know, having a foundation in keys and scales is, I feel, at the very core of what can help you. And then there's obviously more advanced theory getting into different types of scales and different types of chord progressions and things of that nature. I would encourage you to learn the basics, and I want to try to give you some tips, at least starting out. But I want to just talk about a point that I've mentioned before: learning your keys and learning your scales. Some of you might think that that is a daunting task, that is so difficult to do. To be quite honest, you could really get away if you just learn a couple scales. With our samplers and our transpositions that we have in a lot of our DAWs and equipment, if you only know how to play fluidly in a couple keys, you can always do shifting on your virtual instrument, things like that. Ideally, you learn all the keys and scales, and there's a very simple thing you can look up online, a chart. It's kind of a visual representation of all the keys and scales and the way that they progress. It's called the circle of fifths. What this is going to do, again, is give you a visual representation of all your keys, starting with C. C is your natural key with no sharps or flats. And then from there, as you go into sharp keys, you progress up from there, and that goes on the right-hand side of the circle of fifths. And on the left-hand side is where you go to your flat keys. And so you probably already know middle C is right here. And so if I do a C scale, so then if I wanted to move up, say the first sharp key, referring to the circle of fifths, that would put me in G. And the only thing different with G is going to be majority all white notes, and then we're just going to sharp the seventh. These scales have 8 notes, including the root key twice. So you're going to hit the root key at the beginning, and you're going to end on the root key. So if I start at G, now I'm going to actually sharp this F. And again, the circle of fifths will step you up through that. And then as you work your way on the left side, you'll be introduced to the flat keys. And so the first one would be an F. So we're going to do a B flat here. My personal recommendation, and the way that I learned when I was taking formal lessons, was to do each of the scales slower speed. Obviously, when you're learning them, do them hands independent. You have to learn the fingering for your right hand and for your left hand also. And then once you get good, you can increase speed, and you can also do both hands. You're probably also going to want to learn the relative minors. They're going to be very helpful. I personally create the majority of my production in a minor key. In particular, learning your harmonic minor scales. Now, if you don't know what any of this stuff means, it's really not that difficult. Again, I want to encourage you to look up the circle of fifths. There's a lot of resources also on the web, and I'll make sure to link one of those too. That way you'll have more of a reference for some of these things. But for instance, what I mean by relative minor key, if you don't already know, this is a C major chord, right? The C major triad. But also following very similar to this scale is a relative minor key. In this case, it's going to be an A minor. And so you hear the major sound here. And now if I drop down 3 half steps, which means 1, 2, 3, the relative minor is going to be A minor. And so if I play the A minor triad, you can definitely hear the difference between the major and the minor. So basically the relative minor is going to follow the same scale And if I play the harmonic minor, I'm actually going to raise the 7th. So what that means is if I play a natural A minor scale, I'm just going to be playing all white keys like I played for the C major. So it would be... The only thing different that you do with the harmonic minor is you raise the 7th. So it would go like this. Now G sharp. So I was basically just demonstrating using the C major scale as an example and the relative A minor harmonic scale, but the same principle applies for all your scales. So once you learn the major scale, whether it be C, G, D, A, as you progress up on the sharp side, you're gonna have a relative minor key. And the way that you identify that minor key that's relative to that major is you drop down 3 half steps from the major root key. And so again, I just wanna re-emphasize, let's start with the G major scale. Okay, now if I want to find the relative minor to this G major, what I'm going to do is drop down 3 half steps from the root key. And if you don't know what a half step is, that means that's the nearest point from this particular note. So from here to here would be a half step, from here to here would be a half step, and from here to here would be a half step. So if I go from G, I go 1, 2, 3, and now I can identify that's going to be an E minor is going to be my relative minor to that G major. And so if I follow the same formula from G, what I did was I sharped the F, which was my 7th. But when I start on E, it's actually the 2nd note that I'm going to be sharping. So that's the natural scale, and if I introduce the harmonic, I'm going to raise the 7th on top of that. Again, the reason why I'm even shooting this is because this is something that's very foundational for me, that's been great help in all the production, whether it's a sample-based beat, an all-composed beat, or a combination, a hybrid beat. This foundation of theory has been a huge asset to me. The main takeaways: learn your keys, learn your scales. If you have time and you can actually take 6 months or a year and do formal lessons, one of the major benefits I can say to that is I actually had a teacher that was helping me go along, and she was actually helping correct things on the spot once per week. And it also kept me in check to make sure that I was actually practicing and doing what I was supposed to do to progress my skills along. You can definitely do it yourself. You can learn it. The stuff's readily available online. But if you have the opportunity and something you think you might like, or you have time to do it, I would absolutely recommend a formal lesson. Without it, I would not have the musical foundation that I have now. Again, please let me know in the comments if there's specific questions you have or topics that you'd like me to cover that are related to piano and music theory. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.